Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Chelsea Echo. Welcome to your preview of Brentford away at the G-Tech Stadium in West London, which isn't quite London, doesn't feel like London, but is London, apparently. Not quite Griffin Park. But what we do have to make up for the lack of Griffin Park is an amazing guest joining us here on the Echo. Dan, it's the first time you and I have had a guest, isn't it?
No, but didn't we have? There was at least one or two last season. There was one when I was in Paris.
No, I mean when me and you have actually been here together. We've never actually had a guest while it's me and you.
Maybe I don't know.
Sorry, just to show if you were one of those guests, you were actually unforgettable. We do apologise. We'll make up for it to get you back on. But, ladies and gentlemen, we are joined by the wonderful Alex Goldberg, all the way from the United States. Mate, how are you doing?
Good. Well, I mean, despite Dan being a little bit unsure, I'm going to go with I am your first guest while you guys have been together. And with that said, it's an honor.
Well, thank you very much for coming on and taking the time. We do appreciate it. And obviously, guys, in case you don't know who Alex is, I'd be surprised if you didn't. Obviously, massive influencer, massive person in the Chelsea community. So make sure you head across the link down below to all his stuff. But we're going to hop straight into it. Obviously, international break has been incredibly tedious, incredibly boring, and the Premier League football is back. But before we do get to it, let's figure out what have we been doing in international break. Alex, like, how do you make the most of your time in an incredibly boring time of the football calendar?
Well, from a footballing perspective, doing the daily show that we do on Playback, we have guys like Louis Beneventi on, and we do pick 10 lists. And I got to get Dan back on to do his pick 10 list, because I know he came on last season to do his pick 10 list. And we do other things like drafts, from the Premier League right now, currently, or you could do an all-time Chelsea draft. You just fill the time with interactive, fun games and exercises, basically. And then you do the weekly, when it's an international break, of course, debate on Drogba. And no, I'm kidding. That's for Twitter, and that I'm so sick of. But yeah, I really dislike that first international break that we all know, when you have the teaser of 3 Premier League games and then boom, international break, just as you were getting your momentum going. So I don't love that one. So how do I truly fill it up? I just fill it up by doing other things that are not football related, really.
Yeah. I know Dan's just got in from a very rainy dog walk. Is that what you've been doing? Just walking dogs, Dan? Is that it?
I feel like a rainy dog walk kind of sums up the international break, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I was going to tune into the Andorra game, right? And I turned it on when it kicked off. And in under 5 seconds, I thought to myself, I don't have to do this. And I just went back to what I was doing. And I was very happy with the decision I made.
It was when we did the pick 10 list, we had with the England-Serbia game was on. And Reinhard just went, "Oh, Louis, are you watching England-Serbia game?" I just said no, because I've got better things to do in my time.
I know I probably should lie and say I did, because it was apparently a great performance, but I haven't seen any of it. I'm not denying it. Like, I've literally not seen. I've seen the score line. I know a football game happened with England in it, but that's about it.
Yeah, no, it's not particularly special. But enough of that. We don't want to talk about that. We want to talk about the real football. It's back. The Premier League, Brentford away. An interesting game, to say the least, of course. With Brentford being a little bit of a bogey team for Chelsea, in fairness, and a team we struggled against. However, that was with Thomas Frank. Now, obviously, the new fella's come in, Keith Andrews, and he's had a fairly mixed bag. I mean, Alex, like, when you saw the news that he was announced as the Brentford manager, where did your head go? Did you think, it's a pretty shrewd appointment, it's internal, or did you think this screams a team that knows they might be in trouble and they could be seeing the beginning of the end of their Premier League status?
My reaction was half of who, and then the other half of, well, it's not Thomas Frank, so it's got to be a downgrade. And I know that's probably a very simplistic way to look at it, but I believe that for Brentford's level, Thomas Frank is a great manager. Now, we'll see how great he is when he's at Spurs. I think he's actually a fairly decent appointment for Spurs, but is Thomas Frank a great manager in general, or is he just a great manager for Brentford? Probably the latter, you could say. And I think that he was almost just as much of the glue as the players that we started to fear on their side. I mean, of course, Ivan Toney, but then Mbuemo became, quite the player for them, and then Vissa, and maybe we'll see with that left winger who really came on. I want to say the second half of last season. I would pronounce it Shade. I don't know if it's Shade or however the heck you pronounce it. I think Kevin is his first name, I want to say. But Christian Norgard, who obviously went to Arsenal, and I know they still have Damsgaard. How good are these players individually? And then how much was it Thomas Frank making them a real team? Because I would say, I know we're talking about Brentford, but the thing about Thomas Frank that I really valued, and the thing that I think he'll raise at Spurs is, especially in contrast to Ange, I think game to game, they'll be able to prepare better for teams, right? Like I think he's a very good adaptable manager where he can go from one game to the next and tweak things and, be pretty prepared. I think his preparation is impressive. So, for the Brentford side of things, are they just going to be much more of a vulnerable team, much more of a team that once things go a little bit south, they go really south because they can't adjust as well? So, yeah, I would say my take on their managerial appointment is more not necessarily about who they gained, because I can't say too much in that regard, but more about who they lost. Like, no matter what, it feels like it would have to be a downgrade.
Yeah, no, I feel the same. I look at, there has been an improvement with the set pieces yet again, which is what Brentford are known for. But I mean, Dan, like for you, do you look at that in a similar way? Do you feel like Brentford will be a team which, they have been a bit of a bogey side for Chelsea, but you feel like maybe the risk is less now? Or do you think this is something where Chelsea fans and Chelsea as a club shouldn't rest on their laurels and really take this more seriously, I guess, because it could be a real potential for a banana skin?
It is, yeah. It's a game that has been really awkward for Chelsea historically. Of course, this is the obvious, right? A new era for Brentford. But if you watched their only other home game so far this season against Aston Villa, I know Villa haven't started the season well, but it was a game that you kind of think is a pretty good reference for how they would set up against Chelsea. They didn't have a lot of the ball. They countered well with Atara, their new signing from Bournemouth. They look like a threat from long throws. I just really appreciate how kind of unashamed Brentford are to play into kind of an old school and kind of very functional style of football. There's no sense that they care about being progressive or feeling like they're pressured into playing a style of football to be more expansive. They've used, especially at home at the G-Tech, and Chelsea have found this out also at the Bridge, and they've actually got a better record at the Bridge than at home. That has made it an awkward test for Chelsea. So post the international break, especially this international break, I think back to last year, Bournemouth was a very tough game that we got out of with a late winner. It's always a weird game, the first one after an international break at this early stage of the season, because you're not quite sure the collateral damage of players returning late and momentum. But I also do think that Fulham wasn't a great performance. So it's not like we're coming off the back of, something where, if West Ham was the game we ended with, maybe you would see more of a difference in performance. I don't know. I don't expect Chelsea going to rock up and win comfortably.
No, I agree. It's going to be a really tough game. But we should actually, before we carry on, because it's something that has happened over the international break, and I completely forgot to mention it, we do need to talk about it. Fulham giving a disallowed goal of the month for the month of August is absolutely mental in my eyes. I mean, Alex, when you saw that, right, what was the first thing you thought?
Tin pot. I mean, that is just, is it shameless? Is it petty? Is it pathetic? Is it all of the above? I do wonder if the kid wasn't 18 and he was 28, would they still do that? Or were they just trying to give him like the weirdest bit of encouragement? Like, no, in our eyes, you still scored it, pal. So we're going to even give you the award. And then I guess it's subjective, right? There's no real rule on what you award goal of the month, but like I'm old fashioned enough to think that in order to award goal of the month, it has to have been an actual goal that counted. But then again, that's me looking at things through a big club lens and not a Fulham lens. So I don't even have any, like, because I'm not from London, obviously. So yeah, like I maybe don't have the same outright vitriol towards Fulham that maybe if you've been going to Chelsea games for decades and decades you would have. But like they're not. I see you guys shaking your heads. Like they're not even a Premier League club that I have really any true animosity for. So it's not like it's Arsenal doing it or Tottenham doing it or Leeds doing it, right? But like it does make me just scoff at them and think lower of them just because that's pretty pathetic.
Yeah, it's that alongside the fact that the United's international break, when you had the same talking point about a disallowed goal for 2 weeks, that's when you looked at that and I was like, oh my god, it really is a slow news week for them. But it was an interesting situation to say the least. But we probably should move on as well. Look at other bits. Obviously, we've spoken about Brentford and sort of who they are and who the manager is. It's a tough one, but with Chelsea coming off the back of an international break, you obviously see a lot of players who have played in places all over the world coming back to maybe not get the minutes. And specifically here, we're talking about South America. Now, obviously, Enzo Maresca did his press conference earlier today. We're recording on Friday, obviously, for people that know. And he obviously mentioned that Moises Caicedo literally arrived last night. The players that came from Brazil arrived and trained yesterday, but they were resting more than anything. And the reality is that Chelsea are probably going to play without a lot of the South American contingent. Now, realistically, I look at that, and despite what we've been saying about Brentford, and obviously they do have a more aggressive way of playing football, traditional, old school, long ball, all that sort of stuff. Do we feel that Chelsea have the tools without the South American contingent to actually make the difference and get the 3 points on the board?
I mean, the one thing I will say about Brentford here, in contrast to how Chelsea face up against them, is Brentford's average age is actually second youngest in the league. It's 24.5, I believe. I'm not looking, but I looked like an hour ago for something else I was doing. And then Chelsea's is 24.4. So like somehow Chelsea is still number one in the league for youngest team in the league, but Brentford are actually shockingly close. But I really think that works to Brentford's disadvantage here, because Brentford and just any team of that level, I feel like the best chance you have against Chelsea is to have older players that have played in, plenty of games against superior opponents and aren't necessarily going to be, wowed by the opponents that they're facing. Whereas Brentford are not just inferior, but they're almost just as young and naive with a new head coach. I do think it'll be tough because I think when Louis, like you said, you have so many players that the advantage Brentford have is probably very few players, if at all, went on international break, right? I'm sure some did, but like not to the same degree that we did, where, like you said, South American FC, you got Caicedo, Andre, João Pedro, Estevo, all returning fairly late. So that's where we are at a disadvantage. But I would say that, even with question marks on some of these guys, like Caicedo and Estevo and João Pedro, I think they play. I think probably all of them do start. I think it's massive that Enzo was suspended for Argentina and didn't go to Argentina and stayed and has been settled in Cobham in England throughout this whole break. He also was looking a bit leggy, wasn't he, at the start of the season? Like the Club World Cup really caught up to him. And it's always tough because when you're being compared to Caicedo, especially physically, you're always going to look inferior. So, Caicedo wasn't necessarily showing the same signs of fatigue that Enzo was. So I think that's going to be big. I think Enzo obviously starts, and maybe a rare one where Enzo, as long as the game is somewhat in our control, I think Enzo probably plays the full 90, and Caicedo and Andre are the guys that are changed for each other, which I don't think it'll normally be like that. I think it'll be normally be Andre comes in for Enzo, right? I mean, I still assume Caicedo will start. So the fitness aspect makes me a bit nervous because, as we know, no Cole Palmer as well. And the high altitude that the players were playing at for the Brazilian national team with João Pedro, who's throwing up in the first game, and Estevão Tuesday night, we'll see. But he's young, and João Pedro's young, and these young guys bounce back. So I'm still not too worried, but I think it's just as much to do with the fact that I don't know if Brentford, I know you called them a bogey team a little while ago, Louis, but I don't know if Brentford are now constituted the right way for an inferior bogey team to beat a team like us. I think the age and the fact that they're just as young is really going to hurt them.
You mentioned that, and I do agree. But what you said about Enzo, I think, is something which, does worry me a little bit. I mean, we spoke about it the other night on the playback stream, and I didn't know that about João Pedro on international break. That makes me also a little bit worried, especially with the significant lack of options that Chelsea have, especially in that number 9 position, which is something which Dan and I have tapped on. I mean, Dan, do you feel like this could be an opportunity for Sparky Play-Doh to step up and maybe take the reins for a game?
Hold on, before he answers that question, because I don't know what that nickname is. I assume that's Marc Guiu?
It is indeed. Sparky, Marc Guiu, like Play-Doh, just gooey.
Okay.
It's not caught on, but we're trying. We've been at it for a year.
Well, it's good that I knew who you were talking about.
Yeah, it's all up here, mate. Creative genius is in here. It just gets caught here. So the problem is, like, when it comes out of my mouth, I do sound like a dickhead a lot of the time. But you know what we're talking about. We need to trademark it. I think it's important. But if you want to get the word out there and just start referring to that in your playback streams, that would really help us, because I think it's important that everyone knows who he is.
Well, sorry, I know we're stepping on Dan's toes here now, but Reinhard, who you love to go back and forth with on my show, he calls him Marc Guiu. So I don't know if I can come in with a whole new nickname.
It's your show, dude.
Fair enough, I will.
But Dad, can Sparky Play-Doh step up? That's the big question.
I don't know. I really don't know. That's the answer I kind of have at the moment. It's a massive opportunity for him that I don't think any of us anticipated he was going to get, even like a few weeks ago. It's this series of events that have conspired to bring him back from Sunderland, to see him get potentially a run in the team that I don't know. I just don't know what to make of Marc Guiu. And there are things about him that I could see being developed. And I think there is a lot to work with. I think there is there is definitely an imposing frame about him as a forward that, when you think about how Delap's been used so far, I could see working with time. The issue I have with Guiu is, and I think the problem that makes this kind of situation is created, where he's going to be put into roles and situations where he maybe isn't ready for, is he just looks so far short of senior football. And I'm not blaming him for that. It's just that's what he is. And that's why I felt a loan was so important for him. And I felt a championship loan would have been great for him. Like earlier, you remember right at the start of the summer, it looked like Ipswich was going to be the place for him. And I thought that would have been great. For whatever reason, that doesn't come to fruition. And he goes to Sunderland, which I never thought was a good move for him. You're going to a team who need to stay up. You're a very raw forward who needs to play week in, week out. And Sunderland are going to prioritize getting points as quickly as possible, which they're doing. I don't know. It's like, I can talk about his willing work off the ball. I can talk about his imposing frame. I can talk about how there are reports that the club rate him highly, but cynically, I think that he is looked upon as a flip for profit because he costs so little and he will gain you a guaranteed profit. No matter how bad he is for Chelsea, I think it's going to be very difficult for Chelsea to not make some money on Marc Guiu. But this is, I keep on saying this to you, Louis. I said it to you about the centre-back situation. I've said it to you about other things, obstacles or opportunities. And this is a huge opportunity for Marc Guiu. And whether he takes it, whether he's ready for it, is something that I can only answer when I watch him play for Chelsea. Because it was 71 league minutes last season. So
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I mean, that's the extent of the evidence we have. I did like a comparison chart for my article with him and Delap. So Delap's minutes for Chelsea so far this season and his minutes for Chelsea last season in the Premier League. Because Conference League is just very hard, to he was playing against Astana, he was playing against Noah, he was playing against Shamrock. I mean, it's not comparable to what he's going to face. And again, you look at that graph chart, it's like there's Delap with already bits of in the pie chart, and there's just like a bunch of zeros around Guiu because he's football.
I didn't even realize it was that little. I mean, I knew it was little because obviously he got injured once he would have had a chance when Nicholas Jackson got injured. But like, I feel like David Washington might have got just as many the season before under Poch. Like, that's nothing. Wow.
By the way, I forgot he existed, David Washington, until the other day. When Santos terminated that loan, he's now coming back to Chelsea. Like, oh my God, I forgot we actually still had him. Like, that's absolutely mental. Is he going to even be included in the squad? Like, can he be included in the squad?
He could be, I believe. It's a weird one because, like, he's now just too far along to go back to U21 games. And I don't think they'd want to do that. They have Shimaheka, who obviously is killing it. Just won PL2 Player of the Month today, actually. And then they have another talented kid behind him named Chizzy, who's basically just with the U18s because Shim is holding down that spot. So I don't think they'd want to bring in David Washington because they wouldn't really feel like it's the best developmental move for everyone else. Whereas I do think I agree with Dan on Guiu, but I still think Guiu they rate in this moment more than David Washington. And I don't believe they recalled. I mean, I don't know. I don't believe they recalled David Washington truly from the Santos loan because they have any plan for him to really play a part for the first team. So he's in a bit of no man's land. Like, I almost want to say he's borderline bomb squad for a half a season, unless something else weird that I'm not expecting is sorted for him. So, yeah, I guess he could be named for it. But like, Shimaheka is part of first team training all the time. And I believe he has just as much of a chance between now and, say, January to get involved in first teams for Chelsea as David Washington. Like against Lincoln, Guiu's cup tied. I think Shim's got a better chance of being involved than David Washington.
This is just, I just want, can I just say that I think this is the problem with Chelsea's mass trading policy is there's just still far too much of, today we saw the deal, which we kind of knew was going to happen. I mean, it wasn't confirmed, but from Strasbourg, another striker coming in, Omega, isn't it? From, or I'm going to call him Omega, maybe from next season. And the problem is, you can kind of see why the mass trading policy can benefit you, but from like a personal kind of looking at these players as human beings and their own personal development, there just is too many examples already of players falling by the wayside and finding bottlenecks across the team. And that I think is going to keep happening. There's so many players I look at. Not David Washington's like he didn't even get close to the first team, so it's like. But there are players even within the current setup that I look at and go, "You to me look like a player that should have had like a middle loan between your original club and Chelsea," and that's I think the problem right now is that I think Guiu is one of them. Like and they're forced to learn in a really harsh environment. I even think Jackson, I think Jackson was the example I used where I looked at Jackson and was like, there are things about him where I look at and go, you would have probably been much better served for the long health of your career to not move to Chelsea in 2023. Now, I think Jackson was a success for Chelsea, but there are things about that. I talk about transfers. We should talk about the 74 charges before we get to the lineup, right? Because I think from a transfer point of view that Alex, what was I saw your take was kind of a shrug, and I understand why, because we all kind of knew this was in the ether. We all knew this was a thing that had been talked about. I found a podcast to be talking about this like a year or so ago. So it's like it's something that's been around for a while. Yeah. But I guess until we see the final judgment, there is always going to be that air of concern, which I think is valid, without like doomsday, the world's ending kind of reactions.
Yeah, no, my main reaction was just more that like some on social media were acting like it was brand new news that Chelsea were being charged. And that's kind of, I think, skewing it and twisting it. Like we all knew it was coming. We all knew that Chelsea, Clear Lake, right? Bowley and Clear Lake, they reported all of this right away. I mean, right away. Like we had Ben Jacobs on the show last night, and Ben outlined that like before they even signed the dotted line on the takeover, they reported this. They kind of had to, but they were like, hey, these are, some things in the books that we are reporting to you. And, we just want to let you know that we know about it. And here we are, just completely calling attention to it. So, the 74 also, as Ben like outlines, is really just a number to be like kind of sensationalized and probably, it seems like just like the Manchester City 115. It's 115 or 116. I forget.
115.
It's a lot, basically.
But like as it's been pointed out, like they're very specific things. So it really is like basically the same thing, just like broken down into so many different infractions. So again, the 74 feels like it's like, oh my God, that's horrendous. But it's just kind of, as Ben Jacobs said, like one big infraction in many different ways. And of course, I'm not telling you guys anything you don't know, but it comes from the Roman era. So it's also like, what can I really say specifically about what we did then that like pertains to how we want to do things now? It was a different time in football. It was a different regime. And then like, I can't even sit here and bash our current owners because they self-reported it right away. They did the responsible thing. And, I made the analogy last night that, I mean, it's basically like you've thrown a house party. Well, it's not a perfect analogy, but like in terms of the punishment, it kind of is where like, buying the club is like you've thrown a house party, but you didn't get busted. Just right away, though, you said to your parents, like, listen, I threw a house party. My bad. I'll wait my punishment. But yeah, I shouldn't have done that. And that's what Chelsea are doing, Dan. Like you said, like, I don't think they are going to get a sporting punishment. Like, I don't think it is going to be a transfer ban or points deduction. But until you know for sure, then you just have to kind of wince a little bit. Like, all right, let's hope it's not too bad. But it does sound like even from the FA and the Premier League and their own separate investigations that, probably is just going to be financial. I mean, it's a story. It's definitely a story. But there, for people who have been, really tough on this new regime, like this isn't a department where I believe you can be tough on this regime. They didn't do any of this. This was under the Roman era. And again, they reported it right away.
If anything, it holds them in credit because they've done exactly that. Right. I found it impressive when people have been finding a way to throw pelters at Blueco by saying, well, you shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have reported it anyway. I'm like, well, if you hadn't reported it, we actually probably would be facing worse potential sanctions, such as points deductions and all that sort of stuff as well. So credit to them for doing it. I mean, it does raise the question about how different history would have been for Chelsea. Because, I mean, look, from what we all understand, there is not going to be any sporting sanctions on the club. That's just not going to happen. So financial, yeah, fine. But like you look back and think, I think one story that they were linking a lot of it to was Eden Hazard. He was on the verge of joining Manchester United, and then obviously instead joined Chelsea because a couple of cheeky backhands to his agent. So it's spectacular to think like how different things could be, but also at the same time, I'd do it all again. So it is what it is in that case. To be honest, I think look, we'll get the slap on the hand. I think you do feel a little bit sorry for certain clubs because. One thing I did see consistently when this came out was obviously a lot of Crystal Palace fans sort of looking at this and going, well, we've got sporting sanctions. Why are they not going to get it? And it does kind of, I guess, feed into the argument that's been made over the past sort of few months, especially with the Crystal Palace case, where bigger clubs get less sanctions. I mean, I don't know how you fellas, do you think that that's a fair analysis, or do you think that considering the situation, financial sanctions would be a fit enough punishment for Chelsea?
Dan, if you want to take that one. I mean, I look at it through such a big club lens, obviously, because I'm a Chelsea fan, that I guess I'm not looking at it from the vantage point of bigger clubs have it easier. I don't know. Dan?
I can understand that frustration, right? And I spoke about it on my show, that there is a feeling that at times there is a two-tier kind of justice system in football. And yeah, I mean, listen, right, with the Crystal Palace thing, I said at the time, and I firmly believe if that was Chelsea or Man City, they ain't getting kicked out of the Europa League.
Yeah.
They ain't getting kicked out of the Champions League. And I know that's a hypothetical. Like, we could have had the Strasbourg situation. We may still have that Strasbourg situation. But I think the counter argument is, well, Palace's owners should have seen the fine print. It's their job to foresee the unforeseeable. That's what you're paid to do. You are paid to it's like when I get annoyed about Chelsea's UEFA punishment, right? And everyone at the end of the window goes, well, the club were under all these sanctions and they couldn't do it, but they would have known far in advance what these were. It's like, no, you are, this is your job. You're paid to do that. But at the same time, yeah, I do have sympathy there, because there is that feeling, right, that there is a gap. There is a wealth gap in football. There's a wealth gap in football with the super clubs. Yes, that does include Arsenal and Liverpool and Man United.
Oh, really? Well. Those plucky little clubs.
Yeah, all the free transfers.
They're
that
so
free transfer
brave.
for Alexander Isak. I know, it's plucky underdogs. And it's something that I feel is, I have sympathy, especially if you're a Palace fan. You're looking at it and going, what, Chelsea are just going to get a sporting sanction? They're just going to get a pitiful fee that probably that's going to pay for the FA's Christmas party, but ain't going to dent our transfer budget. And you kind of sit there and go, if this is us, if this is Nottingham Forest, if this is Everton, as we've seen in recent years, they're getting the points deductions. And I think as a Chelsea fan, you've got to be humble enough to admit, even if there are nuances within both of these cases, and even if we self-reported it, I mean, I think we have to understand the financial landscape of football. And that's what it is. And I think that those are broader questions about football that are not just specific to Chelsea. They go a lot broader than that. So, yeah, we will see what comes. But it seems like, from everyone linked in, that this is going to be a sporting sanction. Chelsea will move forward and hopefully not breach again. Because, but then sometimes I do think a transfer ban might actually help us, because I sometimes think we're our own worst enemies in the transfer window. So. But I'm not. I want to make it clear, I'm not wishing for that to happen. So I'll make that clear.
I love the way you've had to caveat to go, please don't actually give us a transfer ban. That would be great if we didn't get one of those. But speaking of transfers, we should probably touch briefly, Dan, for Alex's sake as well, because I think he'd quite like this. We're actually part of the Paul Cannaville fan league, Alex, and it's really interesting because we have head-to-heads sort of every week within the media partners group, and it's very interesting because Dan's not had a great start, have you, mate? Have you made your transfers?
Yeah, but I'm still in a job, and that's the main thing. Yeah. I didn't get sacked during the international break, and I'll take that.
Just to clarify that for you, Alex, he makes Derby look like the 95 points team of Chelsea. That's how bad Dan is at this. It is probably some of the worst fantasy managing I've ever seen.
Long season is what I'm saying. We're only game week 4.
Yeah,
And I had a good time in game week. Game week 3 was a bit better, I have to say.
You still didn't win.
I know, but small steps. It's trust in the process, Louis.
Rome wasn't built in the day, Louis.
I know, but he's like Arteta with all this sort of stuff. I mean, to be fair, Alex, are you in the Chelsea Echo League?
I don't think so.
Okay, we're going to have to send you a link for that. But I mean, it's worth quickly. We need to give a shout out, obviously, to our contenders in the Chelsea Echo League. I still need to sort some other bits out for my team, but just going through it, I'm currently sat 21st in the Echo League. So, I'm a solid mid-table guy. However, big shout out to the people at the top of the league. Norfolk and Chance, which is run by Simon Lorch, is currently top. 75 points he got in the last game week. Great team name. Oscar McIntosh, Star Wars as a trap. Get it? Like Star Wars, it's a trap. Right.
I got it.
Okay. The part of jokes, Louise, you don't have to explain them.
I just didn't know. You just both looked fairly unamused by it, so I was trying to just let out. But anyway, that's the fantasy league section. So we should probably move on from that. If you do want to join the fantasy league, you're new around here, there'll be a link down below to join that. But Alex, now is probably the most interesting part of the show. And what we do here is we pick the Echo 11. And the rule is we do it how we want to do it, not how Enzo Maresca might want to do it, how we think Chelsea can win this game. So realistically, every week I pick a 4-4-2, big man, little man, it's that sort of stuff. Marcus Bettinelli was in goal for most of last season for us. But I mean, it's very much a conversation where we all like to get involved, and it's done democratically.
Bettinelli got tons of appearances last season. I mean, he really did. It was a heroic story. He went from Cobham coffee trips with Reece James to a established first teamer in the Echo 11.
Yeah, actually, that's a very good point, because Alex might know a bit more about this. The life of a third choice goalkeeper, right? Because obviously you do a show with Asmir Begovic, who has been a third choice in his life, right? What does he actually do with his time? Like, does he do like coffee shop trips like Marcus Bettinelli? Because I'd actually love to just live the life of a third choice goalkeeper or follow one for about a week just to see what they do.
Yeah, I mean, it's very equivalent to the third string quarterback that won't really resonate with you guys, but that's obviously over in the NFL, where you're just really never going to play. I mean, some crazy stuff has to go down in order for you to play. But I want to say Bettinelli was so frequent at coffee shops because of his relationship with Reece James, his friendship with Reece James, who is the avid coffee shop goer. I don't know if Betts is still going to these coffee shops in Manchester. That's kind of what I'm wondering. No, I mean, Asmir right now actually is back at Leicester, and it seems like he's back to second string. And not that long ago, he was a starting goalkeeper. But yeah, he's been third string a little bit these last handful of years. And I think Asmir is a little bit different to the next guy. Like, Asmir is so still obsessed with football and moving into punditry that I feel like he could be probably a little bit more out there and a little bit more distant, but he's not. He's like very involved in just talking to all the players who are pretty much all younger than him and being kind of a mentor to them. But I think that's probably what usually a third string goalkeeper is, right? A mentor, a mentor. Whereas we now have Slonina as our third string, I think, which is a bit different because I don't know what Slonina could be a mentor with or in saying. So, yeah, I like the mentorship third string goalkeeper role. And I think like sometimes they're quite underrated. Of course, we have the hero of Baku, Rob Green, who was arguably, although it was like Kepa and then Caballero and Rob Green, right? Am I correct in saying that? Yeah. So, I mean, maybe the distance between Willie and Rob Green wasn't massive, but it was obvious that he was the third string. And usually they are the guys that you really want to have on a show, because I feel like, especially once they leave, they can have such a cool vantage point of what went on, because they just kind of like see everything almost from a managerial standpoint. They're not too involved in anything in particular.
This is it. Me and Dan were actually saying last year, we'd love to just do a documentary series where we just follow third choice goalkeepers. That's it. That's all I want to do. Like, it's just like, we're going to go with Marcus Bettinelli to a coffee shop. I reckon, right, by the way, Dan, on that, I've recently started running the socials for my favourite coffee shop in the world called Bar Italia in Soho. It's unbelievable. It's a really famous place. Fun fact I found out this week, it was actually used in the music video for Smooth Operator by Sade. There you go. Something new.
Bar Italia was?
Yeah, Bar Italia was. Bar Italia was used by that. It's Anthony Bourdain's favourite coffee shop in the world.
Oh, wait a minute, Louis.
I know. I should have told you that.
So, Dan, we were having a nice Saturday after the Fulham game, right? And he was suggesting places to me and my better half to go to, and he knew that we were going out to this restaurant in Covent Garden, and then he kept telling us to go to Bar Italia after. But he didn't tell me that it was Anthony Bourdain's favorite coffee shop. I would have gone. He's a hero of mine.
I didn't know that. So, but there's lots of fun facts given. It's actually Pulp did a song about them as well. Bar Italia. It's on their album Different Class. There's actually a song about it by a famous jazz artist, right opposite Ronnie Scott's. So Jimi Hendrix often went there. It was Amy Winehouse.
All you needed to say was Anthony Bourdain. I would have been.
Well, there you go. I mean, I'll send you the clip. But yeah, basically,
so Louis. Okay, so Gab, let's get back to the Gab Selina.
I want to talk about coffee shops with Reece James and Marcus Bettinelli. I just want to have a coffee with Reece James now. That's all I want. Alex, can you set that up?
Well, I think you might, because I don't think he'll be playing tomorrow, so he might actually have a bit of time to go for a coffee.
That was a great way to segue it back to football.
I know, we should probably do that. So let's go straight back to football. But if you're not on the Bar Italia page, please do already. But let's move swiftly into it. Echo 11, rules of engagement. It is completely democratic, right? So if you want to play a 3 at the back, state your case, and you have to try and charm us. If you want to play a 4-4-2, state your case, got to try and charm us. But I'm just going to assume, for the sake of clarification here, we are all picking a 4-3-3, right?
Well, yeah. I mean 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3, 4.
Yeah. I assuming that in the 4-3-3, one of them is a cam, a 10. Then
yeah, exactly. So I thought, okay, 4-2-3-1. If it's apples and pears in it, lemons and limes, same stuff. Different day, tomato, or depends on how you say it.
Lemons and limes are not the same thing, but okay.
Actually, lemons are genetically engineered fruits that come and derive from limes. So they are.
Okay, but the tastes of them are not the same thing. But anyway, go ahead.
No, it's true. I mean, we could get into conversation about that as well as coffee, but it's we'll save it for another day. Anyway, so goalkeeper, are we all settled with Robert Sanchez? Is there anything we want to talk about with Robert Sanchez? Are we happy with Robert Sanchez, or are we just dealing with it?
The latter.
Yeah,
I've been dealing with it for a long period of time, to be honest. Yeah, I've been dealing.
The latter. The guy could have 6 clean sheets in a row, and I'm still going to be wary and not settled with Robert Sanchez.
What's the meme from Dexter? The guy who's suspicious of Dexter all the time with that music. That's me looking at Robert Sanchez.
Was it? Is it Dokes? The guy? Yeah, I love Dexter. But I think Robert Sanchez for me is just like, I don't know. Like you look at the Club World Cup, and I made the prediction at the beginning of the season, Alex, that I think he's going to get the Golden Glove, but I think he's only going to get the Golden Glove because of the defence in front of him. Nothing to do with him. Like I just can't see Robert Sanchez being ever considered an elite goalkeeper. I feel like at best he's like a mid-table goalkeeper.
Yeah. I have really no disagreement with that. I think that he's good enough if your aim is to finish in the top 4, but he's not good enough to win the title with.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So, but we're going to go with him in goal, I guess. The back 4. Now, this is obviously where it gets interesting because Dan's already said that he doesn't think Reece James is going to start. What is your back 4, Alex? And then Dan, you can state your case about right back.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit tough because Tuchel decided to just go back to what he used to do when he was a Chelsea manager and play Reece James a lot. And on one hand, it was nice to see Reece have such a good international break. Then again, it sounds like you guys didn't see any of that, and that's fine. That's totally fair. I'm not judging. I'm really not judging. I mean, I don't blame you at all. But he did start both games, had a wonderful assist to Declan Rice in that first game. So we know Maresca's got no problem going with Malo Gusto. He's done it already 2 out of the 3 Premier League games. And with Bayern Munich midweek, I could see it again, that Reece James would start against Bayern and that Malo will start tomorrow against Brentford. But you're asking me mine. But you know what? I'll actually go with that anyway. I'm all for doing a bit of load management with Reece, a very popular term these days in the NBA. So yeah, let's go Malo Gusto at right back because I would prefer probably Reece for the European fixture with the big names, right? So Gusto right back. I'd probably just keep the same center back battery. I do wonder, is it a chance for Wesley Fofana to get a start there? But I would then say that Tosin and Trev didn't go on international break either. They've been home, so they should be well rested and ready to go. And I am somebody that, although I do love a fit Wesley Fofana, I also love keeping a center back battery as consistent as possible. And those two don't deserve to be dropped. I don't even know if it would be termed dropping if either of them didn't start. I think Maresca would probably say it's just rotation, but they both have been playing quite well, Trev and Tosin. So I'll just go Trev, Tosin, Cucurella. Now, Cucurella is a bit of a question mark only because he's just playing so much, right? But I don't know if now is the time for Hato, but it's certainly the time for Hato now compared to playing against Bayern. So, I'll still give.
You can play rock, paper, scissors if it's easier. If you want to play rock, paper, scissors, that is something we're allowed to do here.
I'm still going to go Cucurella, and you can sit Cucurella against Lincoln, which is not far from now. So, yeah, go Cucurella. So, Gusto, Trev Tosin, and Cucurella.
I will say, on the right back front, You've charmed me. Okay, so I'm going to agree with that backline. Dan, are you happy with that?
Yep.
Cool. Banging. We'll move on to the midfield then, gentlemen. Now, this is based on what we were talking about earlier, potentially a little bit interesting. So, other than Enzo Fernandez, who I feel is going to be in our starting 11, Cole Palmer is about, but whether or not you want to risk him for this game and maybe save him for Bayern Munich. And obviously, Moise Caicedo potentially will not play. So, who are the three in midfield for you, Dan? Give me your three, and then Alex, if you disagree, feel free to say.
Mm-hmm. I think Caicedo is going to start. I think
he's going to start?
I think he's going to start. It's a shame Asugo got injured because I'm not saying Asugo would have started, but this is where Asugo you feel comes into play, and I would watch where Santos is fielded if he does play in the upcoming weeks, because I think Santos may be used as he was in the Club World Cup as a deeper midfielder if you need to rotate Caicedo, Enzo, and João Pedro is the three I'm going with. So João Pedro effectively playing that deeper role once again.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if I can veer from that. I could go rogue and put Estevao in the 10 because you have deeper numbers on the wing spots than you do in the central spots right now. Because if you go with what Dan went with, that just means Marc Guiu is starting up top, or it means like you're doing Neto false nine or Tyreek George up top or something weird, but I'm not trying to do that. So you could say, well, Estevao, you've been talking about how, you wouldn't mind playing the 10. Here you go. Here's a chance to play the 10, and we can start Neto and then one of Garnacho or Gittins on the other wing. But no, I'm going to keep with what Dan said. I do think that Enzo Maresca wants João Pedro in the 10 position. I think you can even read in between the lines from his press conferences where a few weeks ago when the window was still open, he talked about João Pedro in the striker group. He absolutely listed him as a name. And today in the press conference, he said Guiu is our only striker, but João Pedro can also play there. So I think that's really a sign that he'd like to keep João Pedro in the 10 spot. And I think we've already seen a sign, not through words, but through actions, that when, of course, Delap got injured against Fulham, the move in many of our heads would have been, well, you put Andre in maybe in the 10 position, right? And then you move João Pedro up, or you put someone in the 10 position, you move João Pedro up. But he didn't do that. He kept João Pedro in the 10 and put Tyreek George in at striker. So he definitely wants to have João Pedro as the 10. And let's be real, João Pedro as a 10 is not the same thing as Palmer as a 10 or another player as a 10. Like João Pedro is going to get into those scoring positions and he's going to have plenty of movement in around the box. So yeah, I'm going to go with what Dan said. But what's funny is like I would be starting Andre had Andre not started Tuesday night in the Brazil game. Like if Andre was fresher, then I would say, okay, maybe like you do not start Caicedo and then you bring Caicedo in for Andre. But Andre is arguably less fresh than Caicedo because Caicedo got a red card and left the game early, whereas Andre actually started that game and I think played a decent portion. So yeah, that was a long-winded way of saying I totally agree with that.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm happy with that as well. I think that the fact that Dario Sugo is going to be out for an extended period as well, I think, isn't it a similar amount of time to Liam Delap? So we could be without him for 12 weeks as well.
If Lavia was fit, it changes everything, right? If Lavia was fit and not coming back from an injury, and he was just consistently there, you play Lavia tomorrow. No problem. No problem. But
you see, Ramiro Lavia for me is in the same school of thought as Wesley Fofana now. I'm like, if an offer came in tomorrow, I'd take it. Because they're so notoriously unreliable that you can't. I just think it's a waste of time. I think it's a waste of a squad position right now for a player that could maybe actually be relied upon. Like the fact that Romeo Lavia has not come into my thought process at any point really over the past 6 months, aside from the 1 or 2 games where he was fit and we saw a difference and we saw what he can bring to a team. It's just that I just really don't feel that there's value in him anymore. I just don't.
The thing I would say though about this time last year, we would have all sat and said, "Is Reece ever going to get back to fitness?" And he's been fit since January. Touch wood. So there is recent evidence that these players can get over their injuries, but I mean,
Loftus-Cheek's another example. I mean, he was riddled with injuries in his young Chelsea career at a similar age.
I don't know. We'll have to see. I think I'll be intrigued to see what happens with Roma Lavia. But if he gets another long-term injury, I think that could be his Chelsea career considered over, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm happy with that midfield. Back to obviously 11. I think João Pedro as a 10 is great. I'll be interested to see how he and Cole Palmer play together when that option's there. Is it going to be a case of Cole's maybe moved out to that right-hand side position where he has a bit more freedom? But I think about that Bayern Munich game, and I think about how he took on Nuno Mendes in the Club World Cup final, and you think about the left-back options in Alphonso Davies or Guerrero's at Bayern Munich, who's going to be going further forward. There's always going to be a gap there. So it'd be interesting to see how he deals with it and how he plays in that when that option becomes available. But I'm happy with that. In terms of front three, I think we've already named it, haven't we? But Marc Guiu or Sparky played out front. Right-hand side, Pedro Neto. Left-hand side is where I think it gets tasty.
I'm going to an objection there. You name Neto, which I agree with. I think Neto is he's probably playing the best football of his Chelsea career so far. Like, he's been on a good run. I kind of trust Neto. He's a player that I think Maresca trusts implicitly, so I think he'll start. But Esteval for me's got to start on the right. It's just because it's the type of game that can become very predictable and sluggish, and you need someone who's going to be a bit of a maverick against a team like Brentford. And I just love watching Esteval play football. Like, there's just joy whenever he gets that ball, and you want to cultivate that. And you probably do have the license. Like, do you play him against Bayern? Like, is it the worst thing if he doesn't start against Bayern? Because you've got defensive responsibilities that you don't have in this game, and I don't mind if Esteval doesn't start against Bayern. That's a separate game. This game in particular, I think, you start him again, and then you've got Gittins and Garnacho to potentially come on later in the game. Because I don't think Gittins has impressed so far, and Garnacho hasn't played competitive football in months. So there's no way he's getting thrown into the deep end. I just can't. I'd be stunned if he starts. The way they manage players, I can't believe they're going to throw Garnacho right into a Premier League start.
Is it throwing him in to start? I mean, I am agreeing with you. I'm doing this for the sake of being devil's advocate, because he's a player who plays the Premier League regularly, completely understands it. He's been training all week because he's been at Cobham.
Yeah.
Is it a case of you're throwing him in there, or is he someone who's actually?
But I also think the reason why you'd sign Garnacho is I think he is a potential. I think the best we're going to get from Garnacho, like the value of him, I think is off the bench. I think as a guy who makes runs late on in games against tiring defenses, who's going to go straight at the defense and make runs off the ball, I think that's to me where I sort of look at Garnacho. That's where he starts his Chelsea career.
Okay, here's a question for you, Dan, and it needs to be short on this because me and Alex were subjected to it for an hour a few days ago. Does Garnacho get more goals and assists this season than Noni Madueke did last season for Chelsea?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Premier League goals are we talking about, or goals in all competitions?
Premier League, strictly Premier League. So 10 goals. Well, 10 goals and assists.
Maybe. Actually, when I think about it, because Garnacho's goal record last year for Man United was about 5 or 6, if I remember rightly.
6 in the Prem. 6 in the Prem.
Which is only one off in the Prem, isn't it? Madueke. And Madueke played. Yeah. I think Madueke played more football than Garnacho. So, I could see it. It's probably a better argument in all competitions. I could see Garnacho topping him in all competitions because I think he'll play FA Cup, League Cup, Champions League more. It's hard to know. Garnacho's got a, we had the Garnacho debate, so I don't want to go back into it.
Yeah, we're not going to go back into it. It's the Garnacho debate is officially banned until he does something. We're not doing that. I can't do it ever again. It really hurts my head. But so by the sound of things, we've picked our front three, which is Esteval on the right, Neto on the left, and Sparky played out front.
Yeah, that would be mine as well.
That's it.
Yeah.
How about that banging? Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is your Echo 11. That is your preview for Chelsea heading to Brentford. Make sure you tune in to the final score show after the game, where the score will be taking your calls. And obviously, of course, make sure you head across to Alex's stuff as well, which is absolutely fantastic. And he takes all of your calls talking about the game. Alex, do you have anything else that you'd like to plug? Have you got anything exciting coming up?
Oh, I just recorded another episode with Troy Deeney today. So just keep your eye out on a weekly basis for that. The Football Exchange on YouTube. And then just playback. Next week, we're going to have Marc Guiu on and Saeed previewing that Manchester United game next weekend. So
amazing.
Yeah, that's it.
Great. Well, guys, that has been the Chelsea Echo. If you are new around here, please make sure you hit subscribe down below to get all of your Chelsea content as well. And obviously, if you are listening to this on audio platforms, make sure you give us a follow on wherever you're listening and give us a 5-star review. It really does help the pod out. Obviously, as well, make sure you head across to Dan's channel as well to see all of his content around Chelsea. But this has been the Chelsea Echo. Hope you have enjoyed it, and hope you enjoy Premier League football returning to the big stage. We'll see you later.